Thursday, May 17th. Let's see if we wrap up things. Today is the dress to impress, which is why I'm going back to wearing a tie as opposed to more of my Princess Bride stuff. And then tomorrow is throwback. And then if you have missing work that you are wanting to turn in, that is the way that you can change your grade. Just like if you are currently missing the test, that's how you can turn it in so that your mom stops emailing me and I don't have to harass you. Alright, and if you're wanting to buy things, see me before or after class, you can still sign Podium, which is over here, and open spots as far as the week goes from there. And again, tests, update, you have till Friday. My goal is I'll be going through after school today and updating the next round.
I think I'll be done by then.
For you guys, we finished this story. So
I thought it was going to be another story where you were in second grade again.
Let's see. My other class period did not finish this one, so that's why I had to put that up. Alright. So, today's story, which we'll jump into. Today's story takes like the whole class period. It's lengthy. I've had kids who have, fancy word, postulated, hypothesized that today's arrest involves drugs, and the answer is it does not. Tomorrow's kind of involves that, but today's does not. Partly the reason being, I am one of the only members of my family who has not been in jail or in rehab, is not an alcoholic or not a drug addict. It is very common in my family, which is partly what scared me away. When you grow up with drug addicts and you grow up with alcoholics, kind of scares you off doing it yourself. And so that becomes part of the issue. Congratulations. As we continue. And so because of that, that is not where today's story goes. Yesterday was a bit more of a uplifting story where you got to laugh at young me making poor choices, as you should, because young me was an idiot. This is also young me being an idiot, but unfortunately, this one doesn't quite go as much in the humorous direction as much as the just sad. Well, that's the way things go. To help you a story, I figured I would show you pictures of me from the time period to help you properly envision. This story begins in 8th grade and then continues into my freshman year. So I went back and tracked down pictures of me from 8th grade and freshman year with my big fluffy hair that I had going as my throwback way back into the 90s. So that way you can try and picture this nightmare of a child as we get into today's story. Alright, for this one, this begins in 8th grade, about halfway through 8th grade. There is no easy way to go about getting into this one, so I'll just tell you straight off the bat, I shoplifted. And so the way it begins is in 8th grade, I was watching other kids in my school shoplift. And there were some like professional shoplifters in my class. They would go out and steal things like CDs from stores, then come back and resell them to other kids. We had a group of kids that would go out and steal like CD players and radios from Walmart and then bring them into school and sell them. And so I saw these kids doing it, and I was like, these kids are idiots. They weren't idiots because they were shoplifting. I thought they were just idiots in general. Like they were just the dumb kids and they were getting away with it. And I'm like, if an idiot can shoplift and get away with it, what would happen if a smart kid did it? So I decided that I was going to try shoplifting because I had to be smarter than these idiot children. And the bad news is, I was good at it. Turns out I was really good at shoplifting. Well, one, I limited myself because I tried to have morals and be a good person. And so I just refused to shoplift things like CDs or radios, stuff like that. I only shoplifted 2 types of things, candy and comic books, and that was it. But I was like a professional shoplifter of candy and comic books. Had a huge comic book collection connecting back to this. Same thing with candy. And so this went from end of 8th grade, the entire summer between 8th grade and freshman year into my freshman year. So probably over the course of 8 to 9 months from 8th grade into freshman year. To the point where my freshman year of high school, I shoplifted so much candy that I could not eat it all myself. I started bringing it to school and giving it to other kids. I would just bring in a duffel bag of candy and then walk into the class and like just make it rain and just give to other kids because I figured that was how I would make kids like me. And it kind of worked. They liked my candy, which is almost the same thing. Dylan?
How often did you do it?
Probably once a week, once every 2 weeks or so, depending on when I get a chance to ride my bike out to the store, or I would go with my parents to a store or something like that. Yeah.
How are you able to manage getting that much candy in one trip without getting caught?
I'm not going to walk you through my process because I don't want other kids to be like, oh, that's what we're... And so let's just say I had a process down where I was good at what I did. I applied my genius intelligence to breaking the law, and it turned out I had skills. Dylan?
How much would you take each time?
Depends. Comic books, I mean, part of what you do is you limit yourself because you don't want to get greedy because that's how you get caught. And so it was just a matter of each time I went, I would take a certain amount of things and then you sort of, never mind, I'm not going to go down the path. Let's just say that I got my procedure down. You'll have to wait on your questions now. There's so much more coming besides just that part of it. I'm glad to see it fascinates you. So, oh God, yeah, this is just the very tip of the story. So, from here we get to beginning of freshman year, and I was on the wrestling team at my school. I started wrestling in 8th grade, went into freshman year. The only reason I was a decent wrestler because I had a younger brother, the one I mentioned before. And when you have a younger sibling, you beat up on them like a hobby, and that ended up actually making me a really good wrestler. I just had to take my skills of beating up my younger brother and then redirect it towards other people. And they were like, "You're angry," and I'm like, "I have issues!" And so it made me a fairly decent wrestler. So on the wrestling team, go forward to November of my freshman year. In the hallways one day, and I see this kid who's a ladies' man. And so the chicks dug him. And he was using this stuff called breath spray, Banaka. It's like this little, and I had a kid who went out and bought me one to taunt me. And so like this kind of thing where you like, and you spray it into your mouth. And so he would go and spray it into his mouth and then talk to the ladies. And the ladies like, ah. And I was like, ooh, I also want to talk to the ladies because, again, yeah. And so because of that, I decided breath spray was the one thing I was missing to mac on the ladies. So I decided I was going to go out and get breath spray that afternoon. Luckily, we had a wrestling meet. And unlike nowadays when you guys have a sporting thing and you have to like go to the coach's room after school and stay there the entire time, in high school they treat you like big people. And they go, bus leaves at 5, go do a thing, be back here at 5. So, me and a whole bunch of my wrestling friends decided to go like wander around behind Noblesville High School. And right behind Noblesville High School, there is what's now an AutoZone, but back when I was in school, instead of an AutoZone, it was a drugstore. And then right in front of it over here to the left is a McDonald's. And so we went to the McDonald's and hung out, and then we went to the drugstore afterwards. And literally right behind, like this building right there, is my high school. And so it was like right across the parking lot. And so we went to the McDonald's and then we went to the drugstore, and I decided this was the day that I was going to steal some Listerine, or not Listerine, some Banaka breath spray. And so I went into the store, and this is going to play a role in a moment. It had like this double door system where instead of like the sliding doors, this was back during dinosaur times, and you had to actually use your hands to push open doors like Neanderthals. And so it was set up where you didn't come straight through. This was a full glass wall, and you would come in and then enter the store that way. And then there was a cashier over here, and you would come in and then go out that way again. And so I had like a little funneling system. Came into the store. I had no idea where the breath spray was. I'd never bought it before. And so I wandered through all of these aisles trying to figure out where I could find the actual breath spray, and eventually found it. And then I had to figure out how to go about stealing it. I'd never stolen breath spray before. I'd only ever done candy, and I'd only ever done comic books. But my particular method wasn't going to work, and I was in a bit of a hurry because of the wrestling meet, and I had a whole bunch of other wrestling friends who were there who were stealing the place blind because I hung out with a bunch of other hoodlum kids. And so these other hoodlum kids were stealing all kinds of candy. And I'm like, I'm not stealing candy today. I'm a good kid. I'm just stealing breath spray, and that's it. And so I went and found the package, and then I decided, it's like, simple enough. I'm just going to rip open package, take out breath spray, put breath spray in pocket, and then I'll just put this on the shelf. We'll be good to go. I didn't want to get caught, so I remember I walked like all the way over to the far side where you have like the edge wall. I remember I was walking down that aisle, had the breath spray in one hand, playing it as cool as possible, walkie-walkie, rippy open, take breath spray out, put it inside my coat pocket, crumble up package, put package on wall, turn corner, keep going, done. Everything was fine. And I'm like, well, that was simple. And so I had it in my pocket, walked around, like talked to some of my other friends, saw them shoplifting, and I was like, all right, I'm out. I'm going to go ahead and leave. So I'm leaving and walking out. I've been in there probably 10 minutes or so, talked to my friends. The checkout counter's over here, and I remember I passed my friend Eric, who was like my honest friend, and so he was actually paying and buying for his stuff. He was the good kid on the wrestling team. And so he was paying for the stuff. I remember I walked past him and went through the first door and then turned, and I was opening the door to leave when hand comes down on my shoulder, and left shoulder. And if you've ever,
It's always the hands on the shoulder.
right, done that bad thing, and in that process of getting caught, there is a feeling that happens into your tum-tum area that is hard to describe, where it feels like death has just settled into you. I had that death tum-tum feeling. Hand comes down on my shoulder, and I hear a male voice behind me go, "Were you planning on leaving?" And I just went, oh. Hand on door. Freedom and glass in front of me right there. Hand on shoulder, male voice behind me. Here's the thought process that goes through my head.
What do you say to that?
I figure I'm young, and I'm a wrestler, and I'm in shape. And the chances of whoever this person being as in shape and knowing what to do is unlikely, because we've learned how to do grappling moves and how to get out of like a hold like this. And I know exactly what to do, how to drop my shoulder, how to grab wrist, how to spin and move. And I know I can get door open, be out the door, turning and running before this person even knows what's up. And I start going through the process in my head of how to go about doing this. And then the other voice comes in and goes, you know, the store's filled with a whole bunch of kids from your school. What are the chances at least one of them is going to rat you out? That all it takes is one of those kids. And there's kids on the team who are not fans of me, who I was not friends with, who would be in there. And there is every chance they would give up my name in a heartbeat. And I had that thought of which is worse, getting in trouble right now or having them come to the school and arrest me in my classroom. And I had to weigh that for a second of could I trust the people in there or not. And eventually I went with, can't trust them. And I did one of the toughest things I've ever done. And I let go of the door. And I remember watching like the glass door go away from me. And I got turned around, and the person standing behind me was the pharmacist, wearing the white overcoat thing and holding the packaging in his hand. And he goes, "Were you planning to pay for this?" And I went, "Yes." And he goes, "Then you probably should have." So I went, "I'm sorry," because I thought he was looking for an apology. And I'm like, oh, I can do an apology. That's easy enough to do. And I went, "I'm sorry." And he goes, "Well, you're going to have to come with me." And I went, "No." And he goes, "Son, we have you on camera." And I went, oh. Because I figured it was going to be hard to fight the camera thing. So I let him lead me back through the store, hand on my shoulder, holding on to the packaging in one hand, and he walked me back through the entire store, and all of my friends were coming out of the aisles to watch me as I had to walk through the entire thing. And the level of shame and disappointment as I walked through this was overwhelming. And he walked me to the back of the store where they have like these little swinging, I still remember, it was like these silver swinging doors you go through like into the back area where they have all the stock on the walls and stuff like that to bring out. And he took me through the little swinging doors, and he went in there, and it was like this big open empty area with like shelves with like just products on the shelves to bring out. And he brought me in and grabbed a chair, like my little red ones I have over there, and he dragged it across the ground. I was like, yeah, because it scraped on the ground. And he slammed the chair down, and he would sit down. And I was like, okay. And I sat down in this little chair, and I was like, holy crap. All I could think about was, I screwed up. Like, I'm getting arrested. Like, this is big time bad kid things. Like, I was in advanced classes, I was an A student, I hadn't really gotten in trouble, except for that other arrest, for like ever, and so the idea of it, it was overwhelming me trying to figure out how badly I had screwed up my life. And he sat me down, and he goes over to this wall phone to my left, and he calls the police. And I listened to him, he was like, yep, I caught a shoplifter, yep, he's in the back right now next to me, yep, breath spray, yep, no, I'm serious, breath spray. And I was like, oh my God. And then he put like the breath spray down, and he came over to look at me, and he was like, son, stay there. The police are on their way. And then he went back out the double doors and then just left me sitting there. And I'm sitting in this chair in this big open room trying to figure out how badly I've screwed up my life, going through all of these things in my head. And then I look to my right, and about from me to where the wall is where the wall is there, and there's an emergency exit door just right there, and it just says exit on it. And I'm like, oh, I could just get up and run out that door. And I know my high school is right there. If I open that door, I can see the front door at my high school from it. And I'm fairly young and fast, and I could easily get there before him. And I would love to tell you that I am a good person, and I decided to take my punishment like a man. But I was going to run. I was going to go out that door. And the only thing that stopped me was knowing that they had me on camera. If he had not said that he had me on camera, I think there is a good chance I would have run. But I was worried that they were going to take that film into school and show it to the office, and they were going to actually walk in. I just kept picturing them walking into my classroom with police officers and arresting me in front of everybody. And that image scared me enough. I just sat there trying to figure out what to do. And I was going through my head trying to figure out what I was going to tell my mom. We had a school dance coming up, and there was a girl I was planning on asking out, Shelly. And so I was like, how am I going to ask this girl out now and be like, oh yeah, I'm the kid that got arrested. You want to go to a dance with a criminal? And so I had stuff like that going through my head and trying to figure out what I was going to tell my younger brother, what my grandparents were going to think. I'm just my favorite teacher. I didn't have Mr. Purvis yet, but I had my English teacher at the time who I did enjoy. I'm like, what am I going to do? All of these things going through my head. And then the swinging doors open, and in comes the pharmacist with this really big police officer. And they both come walking in, and the police officer holds up the packaging, and the police officer looks at it a little bit, and he puts it down. He goes, "This is the kid." And the pharmacist's like, "That's the kid." And the police officer walks over to me. I'm just still sitting there, and I look at him. He's this massive man, and he was like, "Stand up, son." And I stood up, and he was like, "Breath spray?" And I was like, "Yes, sir." And he goes, "How bad is your breath that you got to steal breath spray?" And I'm like, I don't know. And I was like, all right. And he turned me around and put handcuffs on me. like actual big metal handcuffs. And if you've never worn handcuffs, one, good. Hopefully you never do. Two, they're painful. They go on, there's this little bone that you can feel in your wristy bits, and it depends on how angry a police officer is with you. There's a squishy bit of your arm, and then there's a bony bit of your arm. And when you've made a police officer angry, they go for the bony bit, and it hurts because it's like a vice that goes in there and it crushes. And he went for the bony bits, and it hurt, and I made a little squeaky sound. Because it went click, and I went, and he went, good. And I went, oh. And then they did the thing where they like lift up the one arm, and they took me back through the store. And the police officer was walking me through the store, and I had to go back from that back thing, like down the aisle. And I remember, it's weird the little things you remember. Because one of the little things I remember was as soon as we came through the double doors, I remember looking to my left, and there was a mom with like a little girl who's probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old, and they were like shopping. And I remember looking over and making eye contact with the mom, and she looked at me, and I smiled at her because I was trying to be a good person. And then she looked at me and then saw the police officer, and then I saw like her gesundheit process what happened, and then her face dropped, and then she took her child and moved her child behind her, which doesn't seem like a big thing, but it implies that you are such a horrible person that the mom felt she had to protect her child from me. And I'd never experienced that before, of having to have a parent protect their child from me. And so it was like this sinking feeling of just, oh, I'm that bad of a person. And then led me through the front. I went through the double door area again. No, not yet. Through the little double door area again. I remember as I went through the little double door thing, like that feeling of, oh, last time I went through these double doors, I was free and life was good. Now I'm going through the double doors and life sucks. And his cop car was parked right outside, like right there. Didn't have like the woo-woo going, but it had like little lights flashing. And as I walked out, he put me in the front seat, not the back seat. I got to sit in the front seat this time. Big boy. And I remember as I had to get into the front seat, he had to put the seatbelt on me because I couldn't do it with my hands. And so like I sat down, I remember him leaning in and putting the seatbelt on me. And I remember him as he leaned in and clicked it on me. And I looked up and looked at him, and he looked down at me. And just this look of, I don't know, derision, hatred on his face as he looked at me. And he just went, try not to steal anything while you're in my car. And it was just that other, like it was just a kick in the gut. And I remember just thinking, yeah, I'm a piece of trash. Okay. And just like that feeling of it sinking in. And I sat there in the front seat, and then he came and sat down in the driver's seat, and then we drove to the police station. And Noblesville's not a big town. It was all of like a 4-minute drive from here to the police station. So it wasn't like a long time. And I don't remember going in, like your brain blocks out bits and pieces. The next thing I remember is being in like the little police station office. And I remember it being tiny. Like it felt like, looking back on like the size of my desk area was like his entire like office. And he had like this little desk and there a computer. And I remember him calling my mom, and I couldn't hear her side of it. Just like, yep, we picked up your son. He's arrested, and we're going to need you to come to the police station. Shoplifting, breath spray. Yes, I'm serious, breath spray. And I'm like, ugh. And so I remember calling that, and then him hanging up. And then eventually they took off my handcuffs at some point. I don't remember them coming off. I know they were off. I remember just sitting in this chair, and like I was like right across from him, and he was typing at the little thing like my arrest report or whatever it was that they do. And I remember just like sitting in this chair waiting for my mom to show up, and beating myself up about how awful of a human I was. And 2 things I remember while I was sitting there. One was to my left as I was sitting there. One whole wall of his office was wanted posters of criminals. And I remember just thinking it was fascinating because it was like all these people with like mugshots and what they did. It was like just this whole wall of like 100 of them everywhere up there. And I thought it was kind of fascinating. And honestly, I was trying not to cry. And so I was distracting myself trying to look at these mug shots. And I remember I was like just sitting there looking through them, trying to see what all of the different people did. And I noticed that the police officer was like looking at me and then looking at the wall and then looking at me. And then the thing he said sticks with me to this day. He looked at me and he goes, "Oh, you're looking at the wall, huh?" I just like nodded and he goes, "Yeah, you probably have family up there, don't you?" And it was just like that, like that kick in the gut. And I just went, ugh, and I just like stared straight down. I'm like, I am not looking at anything else. It was like that perfect mean thing to say that just knocked the wind out of me. And the next thing I remember is my mom coming in, the door opening and her stepping in. And both my parents are good people. Like I got along with them really well. And my mom came in and the door opened and she didn't yell. She just stepped in and looked at me. And I looked up at her. And she just stood there staring at me for a moment. And then she just goes, "Is it true?" And I went, "Uh-huh." And she just went, "I am so disappointed in you." And then just turned around and walked out. Like, that was it. I'm like, do I go with you? I'm like, I've not done this before, technically. So I'm like, do I leave with you? So I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, I don't want to stay with this guy because he's scary. And so I got up and I followed her out. And I remember we had to like check out at like a little police desk. We checked out like this little police desk thing and then went out and we had a gray Pontiac Bonneville. And it was November and it was cold out. And I remember I sat in the front passenger seat and I put my feet up on the dashboard and wrapped my arms around my legs and just leaned my head against this cold window while my mom talked like on the drive home. And there was no yelling. It was just that disappointed parent talk. What did we do wrong raising you? Do you not have enough money? Why is this a thing you feel you have to do? Do you realize what you have done? And it was just like that constant making you feel awful conversation the whole way home. And all I was doing was leaning against this window, watching the trees go by, and going over in my head how much I have ruined my life. Trying to figure out what my grandparents were going to think, trying to figure out what teachers were going to think. Thank God this was before social media, but I knew kids at school were going to know about it because kids are still kids and they talk, and trying to walk through all of this in my head. Got home, my mom was like, "Go up to your room, I'm going to talk to your father when he gets home and we'll deal with it then." And I went upstairs and laid down on my bed and just stared at the ceiling and answered this random phone call. So, laying on bed, staring at ceiling, and I just remember going through everything in my head about how much I've screwed up my life. And again, I'll be honest, a lot of it was, you do realize I'm in the middle of talking about getting arrested right now. And all of a sudden,
the stories?
yes, and then your irresponsibility, third favorite Parker.
Also, how dare you say that? I know I was your first.
I did not say that, he said that.
Thanks.
You're welcome, good luck with your project, dear. And someday you'll move up to second favorite Parker.
Who's the first two?
Random kids on the street.
You don't even know if their names are or not.
Parker! Their names are Parker! So, laying on bed and going through it, honestly, like my thought was about girls and the fact that I was never going to date again. I was like, I'm a freshman, and I can't date like for the rest of the time I'm in high school because no girl's going to ever want to date criminal me. And I was like, that's sad. And so, eventually my dad gets home. And my dad was a good guy. And so not a jerk or angry or beady or anything like that. It was still not a thing I wanted to deal with. And I remember they eventually came upstairs and I sat up on the bed and they came into my room and they were like, "All right, we have talked." And I went, "Uh-huh." And they go, "You're grounded." And I'm like, "Yeah, I saw that coming." And I'm like, "I thought that was going to be..." And they go, "Well, the worst punishment we think we can give you right now is making you go to school tomorrow." And I went, "That's the worst punishment?" And they go, "Oh, hon, you don't understand. Going to school tomorrow is going to be one of the toughest things you ever have to do." And I went, "I go to school every day." I'm like, "I don't think you understand." And they go, "No, hon, you don't understand. Your life changes from this point moving forward. You are now going to be labeled a criminal. People are going to look at you differently. Tomorrow is going to be rough. Are we disappointed in you? Yes. But right now, you need love and support because you are not going to make it through this week if you don't have that. And I was like, oh, okay. But I still thought they were just overreacting, and how bad could it be? Oh, did I not understand? So, next day, again, this is before social media. We do have things called telephones, though, and we have this thing called kids like to talk to each other. Getting on the school bus in the morning, kids were already turning and looking at me. And I remember sitting on the school bus and kids gophering, where they would like sit there and like pop up and turn to look at me and then pop back down, and then I would hear like giggling and talking, and it was just that kick in the gut. But that was it. And I'm like, all right, I can handle that. Kids talking about me, it's going to happen. Then I got to school. And at school, the wrestling team had gone out and had bought a whole bunch of things of breath spray and taped them all over my locker. So that was the first thing I saw when I got to school. Then throughout the day, as I walked the halls, kids would spray breath spray at me as I walked down the halls. And when they would just say, psh, and they would just spray it. And then I got the nickname Banaka, because they would then just call me that randomly in the hallways. And it became just that random, kids are awful and they will harass you because that's what humans do. And it was tough. I could not imagine being on social media for it now. Just dealing with it face to face was rough. And it was little things. Again, it's weird how it's the little things that stick with you. I remember walking into my advanced English class. And in this class, there was a girl in this class I barely knew, talked to her on occasion, and I remember I had to walk past her desk to get to my desk in the back. And as I walked past her, I remember she had like her pile of stuff on her desk, and she was talking to a friend, and she looked up and saw me, and I saw like her process who I was. And then it was subtle, but it hurt, because she just moved her stuff to the other side of her desk and then put her arm on top of it. And it was just one of those little things where then she went back to talking to her friend. But again, it's just like, it implies, I no longer trust you. And it was like that little thing that she did sticks with me like 30 years later, of just that punch in the gut of how it sucked. And it was rough. I mean, that day was awful. Of teachers who knew and stuff like that. And my parents were right. Dealing with all of that was awful. I did eventually have to go to court because I got arrested. And if you've ever been to Noblesville, they have a courthouse right there in the center of town. I actually had to go to court in front of a judge in that courthouse. I can still look up and know what window I was in from being there at that time. And I had to go in front of a judge. I had to take like a day off school with my mom, and we had to go in front of him. I had to dress all nice and fancy and go in there, and it was rough. But the way it went is I went in front of the judge, and I had to get called up, and he had like my school records and all that, and called my name. And I didn't have a lawyer or anything like that. It was just me and my mom. And he goes, well, says here that you've been a good kid throughout your whole life, and you've never gotten in trouble before. Because apparently the 7-year-old me thing was not actually on my record. That was just me getting yelled at, which I did not know at the time. And I was like, oh, yeah, yes, I've been a good kid. And he was like, and you have good grades. And I did have good grades at the time. And he goes, all right, so here's what we're going to do for you, son. Do you know what probation is? And I'm like, I do, because of my family. And so probation is where you have to like go and check in with a police officer every week or every month and like talk about what a good person you've been and not getting in trouble. He goes, we're going to do what's called deferred probation. Do you know what that is? And I go, no, that's a big word, sir. I have no idea what you're talking about. He goes, the way deferred probation is, he goes, we're going to assume this was a one-time thing and you're never going to get in trouble again. And I go, obviously, never going to get in trouble again. Makes perfect sense to me. He goes, what we're going to do is we're going to put on your record that you have made a mistake. And as long as you don't get arrested again before your 18th birthday, on your 18th birthday, this gets expunged, meaning it gets wiped off like it never happened. So all you have to do is make it to your 18th birthday with never getting in trouble, and this disappears. And I was like, that's awesome. And then the judge got quiet, and he goes, but here's what you need to understand. And I went, yeah. He goes, if you ever get in trouble for anything between now and the day you turn 18, you are going to get brought back in front of this court, and you are going to get punished for both things. He goes, and I mean anything. If you are out past curfew and it is 11:03 and curfew is at 11 o'clock and you are with your friends and you are coming home from the chess club and the police officer pulls you over, your friends go free and you go to jail. I am putting that in your record that you are not let off. If you are at someone's party and you are stone cold sober and everyone else there is drunk, I am putting in your record that you go to jail for being at that party. If you do anything which recalls there's a police officer to run your name, you go to jail, and you are going to get the full punishment behind this and whatever the new thing is. And I was like, oh, okay. He goes, but if you make it to 18 and make no poor choices and make it think like this is a thing of the past, this disappears like it never happened. Realize, my birthday is May 18th. End of senior year, beginning of freshman year, which means I have to make it through all of high school, never making a poor choice. Any poor choice throughout all of high school, I go to jail. So that is now hanging over my head at the beginning of my freshman year. And I was like, okay. And then from there, I managed to get through. There are other things that happen. So, turns out the wrestling team was not real happy with the whole me getting arrested thing. And so, I was beat up on my wrestling team for being arrested. I remember, so this was like the next day, that really tough school day. I had to go in, and at the wrestling practice, the coach was not happy with the fact that one of his wrestlers got arrested. And so we did this thing called a throwing drill during practice. And a throwing drill, if you're not a wrestler, is where you practice throwing someone over and over again. And so the coach was like, all right, here's what's going to happen. We are going to do a throwing drill. And he was like, because I think some people on this team need to understand that their choices don't just impact them. Their choices look bad on the entire team. And he goes, we're going to do throwing drills today. And I was like, okay. And he goes, we're going to do a headlock throw. And a headlock throw is where you grab someone's arm and you grab their head and you put your hip through and then you throw them. And there's a safe way to do it and there's a not so safe way to do it. And he goes, all right, pair up for the throwing drill. So here's a picture of my wrestling team. This is me. And he goes, as we start to pair up, I was trying to find someone else roughly around my size. I weighed about 135 pounds my freshman year of high school. And I found another kid who was my size. I was like, all right, we're going to do a throwing drill. And the coach goes, Broviak, that's not your partner. I found your partner. And I went, well, who is it, coach? He goes, your partner today is Corey Laux. Corey Laux was our heavyweight, who weighed 275 pounds, and he was a senior. And I had to partner up with Corey Laux. And Corey was a big boy, 275 pounds of muscle. I was 135 pounds of Twiggy. And so when he threw me, I made little squeaky sounds every time. And he would grab my arm, grab my head, and the safe way to do it is you pull them and you sort of like sink down to your hip so you don't hurt a person. Corey grabbed my arm, grabbed my head, put his hip through, and then pulled like he was trying to start a lawnmower. And my feet went through the air, boom, and I would land on the ground. And I made like, he then decided to up it. And he would, as he pulled through, would jump into the air. So then his whole body would land on top of me. And we did this for the entire practice as a way of teaching me a lesson. And then at the end of practice, we had what's called a throwing dummy, which is like this big 100-pound thing that you use to practice throwing on. And they taped me to this throwing dummy and then took turns throwing me around the gym to help teach me a lesson about my poor choices. Things that would probably get a coach fired today, but back in the 90s, again, that was just a Tuesday. And so it was a rough day. But I did technically learn a lesson. Tomorrow, we're going to get into the story of what happened after this one from high school and on throughout that one until the end. And so that was the second time I got arrested for my poor choice in high school. Carter.
How old were you for your second time or third time?
Find out tomorrow.